was difficult to stay awake during many of the presentations, to be honest. And so being engaging during a technical presentation can be daunting. So what can we do to make them more engaging? You ever thought about storytelling during a technical presentation? When we were children, your parents may have read you a bedtime story before going to sleep, and we really liked that. And then we tend to get away from it as we become adults, thinking that perhaps storytelling, especially within a technical presentation, isn't appropriate. It's all about conveying the data. But if you're speaking to a non-technical audience that already is at a deficit when it comes to what they know, storytelling is crucial, or at least it's really helpful. I mean, even within this whole presentation that I've given so far, I've told a couple of stories. I told the story of me having to give presentations in front of management and not being all that great at it. I told the story of my first job where I didn't have to give presentations and not being all that upset about it. So hopefully, by me telling these stories, and in addition to the story of me creating the Teach the Geek course in the first place, I told that story too. So hopefully that has been helpful in keeping people engaged. That doesn't stop with a technical presentation. If anything, it makes it more important because the data is so dry. If you're able to couch that technical data within stories, I think it's really helpful in having people stay engaged, especially non-technical people. A callback is something perhaps you haven't heard of if you don't know much about stand-up comedy. A few years ago, I took a stand-up comedy course at the Comedy Store. It's a local comedy club here where I live. And I learned about the callback. A callback essentially is referring back to something that you had mentioned earlier in a presentation. And what I like about callbacks is they tie a nice bow around the presentation, and it also shows that you gave some thought into presenting, because it's very difficult to come up with a callback on the spot. When I talk about empathy, I'm talking about us technical people being technical people and assuming that what we know, others know, but they don't. And you know what? We didn't always know what we know. Before we were engineers, before we went to engineering school, before we got these engineering roles, we were non-technical people, just like the people that we're speaking to, if you're speaking to a non-technical audience. What kind of presentation could you have understood back then? And I'm a big fan of, especially if you're talking to a non-technical audience, hearkening back to that person and developing presentations that that person could understand, as opposed to the presentation that you now understand as a technical person. I mean, it makes sense when you hear it, but it's so common for us to not even think about it when we're developing these presentations because we're just locked in on what we already know. But there have been many instances in which I've been to other events, listening to people talk on topics that I'm not familiar with, and they're using a whole lot of jargon that I don't understand. And I'm looking around, and I know a lot of the people, they seem to know what's going on, but I don't. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish they would have put this presentation in a way that us normies can understand, or at least those people that come from outside their field of expertise can understand. I'm thinking that as a person in the audience, and yet here I am as a technical person giving a presentation and not taking that into account when I give my presentations. So basically, I got rules for other people, but not for myself. I don't like the hypocrisy. I certainly moved past that. And I've developed, or I did some YouTube videos on these various topics.